Welcome everyone. My name is Raffaella and I'm a fifth-year medical student at the University of Exeter. This is part 3 of a webinar series on the health effects of climate change, which was developed as part of the Medics.Academy virtual elective. In part 3, we will cover nutritional changes and principles of climate change policies. So let's talk about nutrition first. Climate change can lead to a variety of nutritional deficiencies. Some of these include macronutrients, such as protein deficiency, and micronutrients, such as vitamins, calcium, zinc, and iron deficiencies. Protein deficiencies can lead to many issues, such as kwashiorkor and birth defects. As for micronutrient deficiencies, low vitamin C causes scurvy, low calcium causes osteoporosis, low zinc can result in a variety of issues, from depressed growth to skin lesions to diarrhea, and zinc deficiency also accounts for 4% of childhood deaths. Iron deficiency is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world, affecting billions of people, and it is the major cause of anemia, which contributes to 20% of maternal deaths globally. And iron deficiency anemia in young children also results in lower IQ and can impair brain development. The most vulnerable populations to nutritional deficiencies are children, and this is because inadequate caloric intake can lead to stunted growth, and highest percentages are in Africa and South Asia, but also greater susceptibility to infections and impaired brain development. Other vulnerable groups include the elderly and women of childbearing age. So what are the climatic factors that impact food supplies? Elevated carbon dioxide can have direct effects on crop yields. It changes how much crop we can grow and also substantially decreases the nutritional value of crops. Higher CO2 reduces concentrations of important nutrients like zinc, iron, and protein in grains and legumes. Extremely high temperatures can have negative effects. In fact, too much heat stress leads crop yields to drop quickly. Also, increasing temperature and humidity are incompatible with prolonged physical activity for agricultural labor. So the effect will be largest in places with the least capacity to replace agricultural labor with mechanization. Extreme weather events, such as increase in amount of precipitations, extent of individual precipitation events, periods of droughts and flooding on land are all relevant to food production because both too much water and too little water make growing crops difficult. Salinization of fresh water due to sea level rise means that less fresh water is available for growing crops. Air pollution and ground level ozone can be toxic to plants, reducing plant growth. And finally, pests that are pathogenic to plants are more active at warmer temperatures, exposing plants to greater danger of being damaged. Another important source of nutrition besides crops is seafood, which is a source of animal proteins, particularly important in the nutrition of coastal and tropical regions. In fact, about 3 billion people get 20% of their animal protein intake from seafood, and in coastal regions, 50% of animal proteins comes from seafood. Unfortunately, global fisheries are largely in decline due to overfishing. 90% of global fisheries are fully or overexploited, meaning that given current fishing practices, they will be entirely consumed by 2050. At the same time, climate change will impact seafood nutrition in a variety of ways. Since 90% of excess heat is absorbed into the oceans, as we've seen in part 1, this added heat is making regions of the tropics too hot for the fish to live, and so the fish are migrating towards the poles. As this happens, people along the equator, which are coincidentally also the most food insecure people on the planet, will have less access to some of their traditional foods, particularly seafood. Another reason is ocean acidification due to the direct effect of CO2 dissolving in the oceans, which affects fisheries and access to seafood. In fact, more acidic oceans cause dissolution of the coral reefs, and these coral reefs serve as habitats for many fish. So as the reefs disappear, the fish lose their habitats, and this affects particularly those communities that subsist on seafood captured just offshore in the tropics. So what will be the effects of climate change on nutrition? We currently have around 800 million people in the world who don't get enough to eat on a daily basis, and around 2 billion people who suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. Due to changes in nutrition, there will be people not currently affected who will fall below the estimated average requirement for a given nutrient and become at risk of deficiency. It is estimated that 150 million people will be at new risk of protein deficiency, and effects of protein loss will be most severe in Southern and Southeast Asia. And these effects will be most pronounced for the poorest people in the country because they are least able to afford animal protein. Between 150 to 200 million people will be pushed into new risk of zinc deficiency, and greater prevalence will be in sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, and India. As for iron, about 60% of people who are vulnerable to iron deficiency will lose 3.8% or more of their total iron intake. And again, all of these outcomes reflect changes in diet because people are consuming crops that are losing their nutritional value due to higher CO2. We may also see dietary shifts in certain populations. The many pressures on reefs and fisheries around the globe are forcing the coastal poor to find alternative food sources. And among inhabitants of small island states, the next available option may be highly processed and caloric foods that are typical of the Western diets, and that is the same food that has spurred the global rise in obesity. So to conclude, we have seen that human activity is the largest contributor to climate change. And that means the human behavior is also the largest modifier of the health impacts of climate change. The three main ways through which human action can reduce the effect of climate change on health are adaptation, mitigation, and health co-benefits. So starting from adaptation, this includes those actions to protect populations from the effects of climate change that have already occurred. Mitigation includes policies to attenuate climate change, particularly reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then health co-benefits are the health gains from climate-friendly policies and individual behavior. So particularly focusing on the health co-benefits, examples of these include shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy, resulting in less air pollution, so less of the cardiovascular and respiratory consequences we have discussed in part 2. Shifting in diet from meat to legumes and vegetables results in less premature deaths and less colon cancer. Seeking active transport such as cycling rather than driving helps with heart disease, mental health, obesity, and diabetes. And finally, better insulated buildings means greater energy efficiency in buildings, leading to better air quality in the household. So the final take-home messages are undernutrition, nutritional deficiencies, and dietary shifts are all possible outcomes of changes in food availability. We have seen how climate change leads to drivers that, through a variety of mechanisms, result in many health implications of both individual and global significance. And finally, several interventions can be put in place which have positive effects not only on the environment, but also on human health because of the co-benefits and the coexisting relationship between the two. So thank you for listening. This lecture was a result of the Medics.Academy virtual elective, which I highly recommend to any medical students who are interested in medical education. And to find out more about virtual elective and other ways to get involved with Medics.Academy, check out the description box below. And for any questions, you can find both Medics.Academy and myself on Twitter.